Welcome back to the Bandwich Tapes. I'm Brad Williams. My guest today is composer Adam Schoenberg, whose music has reached audiences through works like Finding Rothko, Picture Studies, and Losing Earth. Adam has built a remarkable career by writing music that is deeply personal, vividly cinematic, and always true to his own voice. In this conversation, we talk about artistic identity, the pressure young composers can feel to fit into someone else's idea of what serious music should sound like, and the importance of staying connected to what you actually believe in. We also get into his collaborations with performers like Jake Nisley, the success of Finding Rothko, and the personal and creative perspective that comes from navigating major life challenges. This one is honest, thoughtful, and full of insight about composing, resilience, and what it means to keep moving forward as an artist. Here's my conversation with Adam Schoenberg. I'm such a fan of yours and reached out, and we'll talk about Jake later, but I've talked with Jake Nisley recently about you and you writing a wonderful piece that he premiered with the San Francisco Symphony, and I can't wait to talk about that. But he kind of sparked the interest of me reaching out to you, so I'm glad we're doing this.
That's who Jake is.
He's amazing, yeah. I first saw your name with the recording of the Kansas City Symphony and I saw Finding Rothko. It was the first tracks on the album, and I thought, oh, okay, maybe this is like a kind of a companion type thing to like Rothko Chapel by Thornton Feldman. And then I started listening to it, and I was like, no, not at all. It's wonderfully tonal, and it's so nice, and it just kind of led me on this path of your music.
Well, thank you for that. Yeah, Finding Rothko was. It's funny when now that I've been a professor for I don't even know how many years. This is my 10th year at Occidental. I was at UCLA before I joined Oxy, and I tell my students it's usually one piece. If you've one piece that really is like a home run, audience loves it, orchestra loves it, conductors love it, then it's going to put you on the map. And that was Finding Rothko. I was 25 years old when I wrote it. It was my first orchestral commission, and it's now been played more than 100 times around the world. And
really,
yeah, and actually, so 26, 27. So this coming season, January 2027 is the 20th anniversary of the premiere, because I wrote it. I finished it in November 2006, right before my 26th birthday, because I was born in 1980 in November. And then it was premiered that January in 2007. So, and
wow.
It's had a life of its own, if you can believe it.
As you look back at that piece with all of this time and perspective and I guess distance from it, how do you feel about that piece now?
That's a good question. No one's ever asked me that. It's a young piece. I see compositional, like structural flaws in it. But in terms of the voice, the intent, the orchestrations, the colors, I definitely think it shows someone with a lot of potential. And I think that last movement in particular, Wine, is the movement that really won audiences over. I think it's to this day, it's one of the most beautiful little moments of music that I've ever written.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, just grateful that I had that opportunity. And what I tell my students today, with the moment you are given an opportunity, obviously, first and foremost, you should stay true to who you are, write the music that you believe in, that is meaningful to you. But like, this is your one opportunity and you want to like deliver. Do not be late with the deadline, and make sure you write the absolute best piece that you are proud of. Because if you stand behind something, then no one ever can take that power away from you. You know, it's still art. Not everyone's going to like it. But if you really believe in it, then that's power.
Yeah. Do you ever, have you struggled in your career, like writing? How can I phrase this? I mean, I think about this in terms of being like a gigging professional musician, like writing, like showing up and playing to the paycheck, you know, and like maybe feel like you're selling your soul a little bit for something. Have you had moments like that, or do you always, you'll accept a project if you know that you're going to be able to keep your artistic integrity with it?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I learned that lesson when I was an undergrad at Oberlin, because, you know, I'm of that weird generation where the world is shifting, but it's still sort of embedded in this more contemporary classical tradition of you know, historically less tonal music. And so I will always remember this moment during my educational journey where I wrote this piece for clarinet, violin, cello, piano, the Messiaen Quartet, and it was selected by the composition faculty at the time at Oberlin to be part of this conference, this like Midwest conference where all the best music schools come together and sort of showcase the talent. But the teacher said, you know, we love this piece, but we will only accept it if you rewrite the middle pretty section, the middle melodic section. We want you to get rid of that. And so I did, and I will always remember at the premiere, so many faculty from other schools came up to me, and students were like, "Oh my God, that was amazing. That piece was so, you know, just," I don't remember some of the adjectives, but, you know, it was like very, very sophisticated, complex, contemporary, and we love it. And I just always remember feeling like, yeah, it's good, but it just doesn't feel like it's me. And so when it was time to apply to grad schools, I actually submitted the original version that I wrote, which had the pretty melodic middle section, and I got into every single graduate school I applied to except for one.
Really?
Yeah. and everyone liked that piece. And so basically today is, you know, I look back at that story, I was basically shape-shifting a piece to win over my professors. And I did win over a select audience, but it wasn't necessarily my audience. And so to today, I 100% write the music that I want to write. I don't feel like I'm writing to impress anyone else. Of course, you know, if you're going to try to, I mean, I'm 45 now, I'm not really applying to competitions anymore, but, you know, if something were to come up that I felt like I needed to apply to, then you sort of have that momentary conversation with yourself is, you know, are you going to write a piece that's going to win the competition and is going to essentially contain a certain number of parameters that you know are going to help get it over the finish line, that will attract attention? Or are you going to write something that you just, you know, stand by and is 100% you?
Yeah.
So it's a good question. Yeah, I don't grapple with that really anymore. I just say,
wonderful.
Stay true to who you are.
That's wonderful. I would imagine that it would put you, you know, you're always kind of, I would imagine doing it defensively, right? You're always second guessing everything if you don't have a vision for what you want to do.
Yeah. I mean, again, at the end of the day, first of all, going into the music business, especially the classical concert music business where there's just not a lot of money, you have to, it's something you actually want to do. You should not go in thinking that it's going to bring you fame and fortune, right? It has to be deeper than that. And so I think if you're going to make this commitment to write music, then, you know, I've always said this, and I still sort of think it's true. I think there's some selfish component to it, which is it's a lonely job. You're by yourself almost all the time. And then, you know, I want to write something that I want to hear. So my first and my first requirement is that I need to be happy with it. It needs to satisfy my own requirements. And if I'm happy with it, then I stand by it. And then I just have this internal belief that's taken years to develop now, which is, well, if I really believe in something and if I really like it, then I think I'm going to like win over the majority of the audience. Certainly not everyone, but I think more, the majority. And that's actually how it's been for me. I've had a really fortunate, lucky career because of these pieces that people seem to respond to. I mean, so many composers get these incredible opportunities to write pieces for illustrious organizations, and it only has the world premiere and it never sees the light of day ever again. And if you look at my entire catalog of orchestral music, every single piece of mine has had multiple performances. And, as we said, Rothko's been performed well over 100 times now. Picture Studies, American Symphony, probably 30 times or so each at this stage, maybe more. So like, I'm lucky.
That's amazing. Do you think that we're having a little bit of a shift back to more tonal music being written? Or do you think do you think there's, because I feel a certain resistance, certainly in your writing, to what we would call contemporary music, dissonant, atonality. Do you think like that there's a kind of a cultural shift happening in the concert hall?
Not necessarily. I think it's just more, I think the world we live in is more open-minded to different forms of expression. I think, you trace the history of contemporary music in the 20th century, right? You have like Stravinsky and the Rite of Spring and this crazy moment, and then Schoenberg is still there, and then suddenly the dissolution of tonality happens and everyone feels like that's the thing, right? Even Copland, who is so tonal, felt the urge to write 12-tone music and felt this pressure to communicate in a different way, which obviously was helpful for him. It was a good way to further develop his craft. But I think there was more pressure in terms of like the camps who were running competitions, who were making selections for schools and getting into programs. And I just think today the landscape, I don't think it's defined by style anymore. I think it's more about like, does this person have something to say? And is it compelling no matter what direction it's in? And so I think tonal music might be more accepted today, but there's still an audience that's not really into it, right? You're still going to have those like the hardcore contemporary enthusiasts, the more Eurocentric postmodern enthusiasts, and that's the beauty of music, right? There's a flavor for everyone to have. Yeah. And I just think we live in a time where it's like okay to be who you want to be, and that's beautiful. I think being a student today is so much more inviting than when I was a student, and then anyone who was a student before my generation who was expressing tonally. I mean, those people were totally, talk about mental health damage to those people. Like if you were in this grad school or undergrad in the 60s and 70s and 80s, like that was a hard time if you were not writing very non-tonal music.
Yeah, absolutely. Do you consider yourself fortunate because I know I'm such a fan of John Corigliano, and would you say that getting to study with him really solidified a lot of that for you?
Yeah, I mean, John is also someone who's very true to himself, and John's fascinating. I love him. He was an incredible mentor to me, and it was funny because it didn't start off that way. I remember struggling with him for our first several lessons, just trying to like gel as human beings and figure things out. And I was prior to that, I was studying with Robert Beezer, who really sort of held my hand through the entire process, like measure by measure, and was there every step of the way and was like incredibly supportive to the process. And I learned so much from Bob. And then when I went to do my doctorate and start working with John, his philosophy was not to like micromanage you. It was, you need to become an adult and I will be here to oversee things, but you need to figure things out. And so I remember the first several lessons were like, 15 minutes or less. I'd walk to his apartment on the Upper West Side and he would just basically kick me out the moment I sat down and says, you need more music. And then finally it became more about the architecture and the structure and how you're going to make these, how are you going to build this piece? And then it became like the world's greatest orchestration lessons with Finding Rothko. I finished Finding Rothko with him, and it was an extraordinary learning moment. So, but he instilled, my greatest takeaway from John was setting up parameters, because composing is infinite, right? It's a linear form of expression, right? It's time-based. And of course you have parameters just from the commission alone in terms of how long you want something to be, or how long the commissioning organization wants something to be. But if you don't set up the environment ahead of time, then what are you going to do? And so John's number one thing is these architectural maps, which sort of set up the entire structure. And okay, this is the starting point, this is the ending point, and you figure out the shape of what's going to happen in between and how it's going to float. And that really sort of helps you organize concepts in your mind. And then you sort of fill in these structures with the notes. So, but John was always supportive of my voice. I mean, truthfully, and I have nothing against Oberlin. I mean, my greatest takeaway from Oberlin, besides being on the men's soccer team, where I still have some of my best friends for life from that experience, was that it taught me how to believe in myself and to give me the strength, because I was not supported compositionally. I was completely alienated. My music was not really accepted at that place. And that was really hard for me as a young person, 18, 19, 20, 21 years old, when you're already super insecure. So I strangely thank that experience for teaching me how to maintain my sense of power, my sense of belief, and then allow me to go into grad school, where suddenly I had mentors who actually liked my music. And I still remember I went to Michigan for one of my interviews, and it was Bright Shang and Michael Doherty. I think Susan Botti was there at the time, and William Bolcom. And I remember walking into the interview, and the very first words out of my mouth was like, I apologized for my music, because at Oberlin, I was constantly apologizing. And I think it was Michael Doherty. He stopped me and he's like, do you know why you're here? And I said, no. And he goes, we like your music, Adam. And that was the very first time a professor told me that they liked my music.
Oh my. Wow.
And then that was it. And then I, made the whole interview circuit with all these other grad programs and landed with Juilliard. And, in my conversation, interestingly, because I first studied with Bob, and not everyone knows this about me, although I just said I was a soccer player. Like, I am a very competitive person. I like to win. And I remember my first lesson with Bob, he sits me down and just says, you're lucky to be here. Only John and I wanted you. No one else thought you were ready for this. But John and I believe that there's something there. We have a lot of work to do, and we're going to start now. So it's sort of like a slap in the face with your very first introduction with your teacher. But, and he didn't even know me that well, but that was exactly what I needed to hear. And it was true. And I knew that. I knew I was behind. I didn't start composing until my sophomore year at Oberlin. I didn't go to the conservatory initially. I went to play soccer and be in the college. And then I transferred to the conservatory my sophomore year. So I knew I was already behind. And this person is saying, hey, we see something in you. Not everyone does, though. So are you ready to step up and learn? And
Wow.
And I was like, let's do it. And I remember I locked myself in the library and I was listening to symphony after symphony, studying just all different orchestra pieces and immersing myself in the music of what came before and what was currently happening.
would imagine that getting to Juilliard after being at Oberlin it would have to feel a little bit like leaving an unhealthy relationship and then going into a new relationship and kind of feeling, having to shed some of those wounds from before.
Yeah, I mean, listen, there were many moments during my Oberlin days that I would cry when I was in my apartment or dorm room, and I'd call my father, who is also a composer, and he went, he was in school in the 70s, and he wrote tonal music, and that was really like not okay. I mean, it really did a number on him where it impacted his composing career. He's, sort of went more into piano improvisation and songwriting. But again, I'm thankful for that experience. Honestly, I never felt bitter or resentful towards the institution. It also frankly taught me that I was never going to be a teacher like that. Right.
Yeah. I was going to ask about that. Yeah.
I mean, I knew I was going to be supportive of my students and certainly let them know when they need to improve and how to improve, but I was never going to belittle someone or belittle their voice. But for whatever reason, I think that's part of my success, again, because it just gave me that determination to be like, you know what? I need to believe in myself because that's the only way to move forward. And if you don't believe in yourself, what's the point of doing it?
Yeah. Yeah. And, I mean, I know you know this, but, every experience, good or bad, certainly makes us who we are, right? And I'm sure that experience in so many ways, I mean, led to the successful person that you are now, even though it probably didn't feel like it at the time. It certainly was making you who you've become, right?
Yeah, it shapes you. And listen, I tell my students this to this day, like the world is so big. There is so much talent out there. And there truly is an element of luck and timing or just the climate. What is the world looking for, right? My sister was an actress. Like oftentimes getting an acting gig is solely initially based on your headshot, right?
Right.
And so it's there's so many parameters now that happen in terms of why an orchestra or an organization is going to give someone an opportunity. Yeah. And I was just in the right place at the right time because you look back at Juilliard, the era that I was there, I was one of 3 composers in the doctoral program. And all of my classes were small. There's actually only 3 composers accepted into my master's class. So that was one of the smallest years ever. But in total, like in my last year in the doctoral program, there's probably 40 composers at Juilliard between the undergrad program, which maybe had 6 to 12, to the 2 different master's classes, to now the different doctoral classes, because it's 2 years of coursework, but then, 3 years or so of writing your documents, dissertation. And so you're still affiliated with an institution, but at that moment, there's a lot of turnover. So, but the point I'm getting at is when I look back at like the 30, 40 composers that were there during my period, there's probably only 3 or 4 people's names you recognize today.
Wow.
And so that point is there's a lot of talent in that pool, but not everyone was given that opportunity, or some people were given an opportunity and failed, right? They could fail by not delivering on time, and an orchestra's like, I'm never going to work again with you because you just screwed up our entire programming. Or they wrote a piece that just no one liked, or they were not even given the opportunity, right?
Yeah.
So, much of my fortune comes from my time at the Aspen Music Festival, believe it or not. So I just met people. I was a student. I was then a stagehand and met Michael Stern backstage. Michael Stern gave me my first orchestral commission. Asador Santorian was the head of artistic there for 20 years. He commissioned me twice. He gave me my very first commission of a brass quintet. So, everything started there. And then I met Robert Spano when I was living in Miami for a brief period of time. He was conducting the New World Symphony, and I met him outside during a smoke break because I knew he smoked, and I was thinking business, and I was like, I need to meet Robert. I love him. And so I waited outside for when the orchestra took a break because I knew their schedule. And sure enough, he rolled out and lit a cigarette, and I just went up and introduced myself to him. And he invited me back to the conductor's suite, and we talked, and then we had lunch later that week. And then I sent him Finding Rothko, and he heard it, loved it, changed the programming of his season, programmed it. And then the day I graduated from my doctorate in 2010, this is a true story. Literally the day, it was May 2010, we're in Lincoln Center. I had just received my diploma, my DMA. I'm about getting ready to return my regalia, and I get a phone call from Robert Spano with 2 commissions.
Seriously?
Yeah.
Wow.
And my parents and my sister are right next to me, and I'm like, excuse me, what? And I was like, wow, I graduate today, and I'm now a working composer. How lucky it was that moment.
Wow. Unbelievable. For the ASO, I'm assuming.
For the Atlantis. Yeah, it was a fanfare called Up, and then La Luna Azul, a tone poem. And then the funny thing is, not to pivot, and I feel like I'm talking too much.
It's okay. No, I'm so intrigued. Just keep going.
So I get the commission. The first commission was a fanfare. It was for his 10th anniversary. They were commissioning 10 composers to write a fanfare for 10 subscriptions, and they wanted mine for early 2011 because I graduated in May 2010. So I graduate in May. Juilliard, the former president at the time, Joseph Polisi, invites me to give the commencement speech back at Juilliard after I graduate. And so I'm planning to do that like in late August, early September. And August rolls around, and the Atlanta Symphony calls me and says, "Hi, Jennifer Higdon, won the Pulitzer, as you know. Her schedule is now really busy, and she can't deliver the fanfare on time because I think she was going to go first or second. And they're like, so we need yours in 6 weeks." And I was a nobody then, so I was not in a position to say no. And so I freaked out, and I emailed President Polisi and said, "Dear President Polisi, I know I'm supposed to give the commencement speech, but the Atlanta Symphony just called, and my very first commission from them is now being pushed, and I'm supposed to deliver it in about 6 weeks. I just called the MacDowell Colony, which is an artist residency now called MacDowell. Back then it was called MacDowell Colony. And I was there the year before. I had a residency the year before, which was extraordinary. I said, I just called them to ask if they have an emergency residency available. They said yes. And they said I can come to New Hampshire tomorrow and go for 2 weeks. But if I do that, then that means I wouldn't be able to give the commencement speech. What do I do? And he's like, you have to go do your commission. We will find someone to talk. Like, go. So I hop on a bus the next day, I leave New York and make my way towards New Hampshire. And then 3 days later, I met my wife.
Seriously?
Yeah. Yeah.
What a period of, however, from the time you graduated until this, this is unbelievable.
Yeah, I graduate May 2010. I get these commissions. I then go to MacDowell, September 2010, meet my wife, who was a playwright at the time, living in LA. And then we had a super fast romance. In December of 2010, I buy a one-way ticket with an engagement ring in hand and fly to LA and never come back. And then we get married September 2011. And now my career is suddenly happening.
Unbelievable.
So, just luck, honestly, a lot of luck. Obviously hard work too. And I tell my students, you have to put the work in, you have to deliver, but there is 100% an element of luck, again, because there's just a lot of talent out there.
Yeah.
Period.
What is that saying? Luck is when preparation meets opportunity. And I think that you are a testament to that, right? You put in the time, you did the work, and then just, man, talk about things aligning. That is unbelievable. Yeah. I think I told you before we started recording, I grew up in Atlanta and studied with, he's now retired, Jack Bell. He was the principal percussionist of the Atlanta Symphony. And I'm quite familiar with that orchestra and just the great sound that orchestra's always had. But the Spano years, to me, are some of my favorites. He was there when Yoel Levy was there, but Spano, to me, just so much heart in that ensemble when you were doing that work with them.
Yeah, Robert is, first of all, he's one of the most intelligent human beings I've ever met. He's just brilliant, and he loves music. He's an exceptional pianist. He's, believe it or not, a fabulous composer. He doesn't always tell people, but he is an incredibly sophisticated composer and a brilliant conductor. Yeah, he's like he's a composer's conductor. He's tremendous.
Oh, that's amazing. Yeah, I've always enjoyed his interpretation of pieces, and yeah, just the sound of the ensemble when he started, specifically when he was working with Atlanta. I would love to hear about how you started working with Jake Nisley, how you guys met each other, and this commission from the San Francisco Symphony.
Sure. I mean, I have no clue what he told you. But when Losing Earth was getting some promotional attention before the premiere, the story that Jake always shared, which is a true story, which I'm assuming he shared with you, maybe not. But, it's thanks to Juilliard, right? We met at Juilliard. I won one of the composition competitions, which was to write a piece for the new Juilliard ensemble. And like any young composer who doesn't know what they're doing, I just wrote for a battery of percussion for like a 10, 12-minute piece that literally required, I think it required like almost 2 hours of pre-setup time. And I wrote for these oxygen tanks, which were so heavy and huge. And anyway, so the story is Jake rolls into the first rehearsal only like 15 minutes early, not really looking at what's to come. And then looks at this piece and is like, holy shit, oh my God, I got to go find all this stuff. And is now late to setting it, late to the party. And he's like, who's this Adam dude? Like, what an a-hole, basically, And so Jake, I think, hated me at first. But then I think Jake ultimately liked my music. And then he and I also bonded in Miami because he was at the New World Symphony at the time. I was living down there. And Jake's one of the greatest living percussionists, right? He's a total beast. And he, after Detroit, he won Cleveland, and then he moves to San Francisco. And apparently, Michael Tilson Thomas, back in 2017, I think, said, it's your time to have a concerto. Do you, want to play an existing one, or do you want someone to write you one? And a few names were floated around, and mine being one of them. And then, Jake was at the helm, definitely pushed it through, and they ultimately went with me. And I started writing it in 2018, and then it premiered in October 2019 before the world ended. And with Jake, it was a very specific commission. It was incredibly collaborative. He came down to LA a few times. I went up to San Francisco a few times. And he basically said, I want you to write a piece that traces the lineage of percussion and essentially how many people learn, and specifically how he learned. He started off in marching bands. He then played in jazz ensembles and learned how to improvise. And then he joined a youth orchestra and became a classical percussionist. And so that's what this piece has. It starts with marching elements. It has only 8 bars of improvisation, but it does have 8 bars of improvisation in it. And then it has a really virtuosic, what's called beast mode, third movement section of highly sophisticated xylophone, simultaneous kick drum, tempo block writing that is challenging. And it was a sort of checking off the boxes that were going to make him happy as an artist, that would also make me happy as a composer. And then it sort of became the very first piece that I ever wrote that I actually thought was never going to get performed again, because I am a business person at the end of the day, right? If I'm going to go into this field, I want to be able to make a living. And the best way a composer can make a living in orchestral music is to write economically, which means you write for the standard instrumentation. You don't require that they hire extra people or rent all these strange instruments, right? It's just everyone has what you're calling for without making it more complicated. But with Losing Earth, San Francisco said, dream big. And I said, you know what? I'm going to dream big. At this point, I've been in the game for 9 years professionally, right? It's 2019. I had good success. And so I thought about John Corigliano, and I thought about the theatrics and the experience. And, for so many experiences, it's like a two-dimensional thing where the audience sits and just watches. And so I said, let's take this concept of losing Earth, global warming, climate change, the globe, this 360-degree impact. And I wrote a piece for 6 percussionists plus soloist plus timpani. And it's you have these like 6 surround bass drums. Jake marches in from behind the audience. It also calls for electric bass. And, it's ridiculous, but there's a purpose behind it and intent. And, and it was tremendously successful. I can't believe it had a 10-minute standing ovation at the San Francisco Symphony, which the president at the time told me that was the most successful premiere they'd ever had, I think, since John Adams' Harmoniaire.
Wow.
And like the audience, I mean, it was nuts. It was literally 10 minutes of standing ovations, and it was awesome, and everyone was happy. And then the piece has, I think, now been played by 6 or 7 orchestras already. And now we have a wind ensemble version that gets played as well.
Yeah, I saw a recording of Jake playing it with Jerry Junkin with University of Texas, I think, the wind ensemble there. A really nice transcription of the piece for wind ensembles. Really nice.
Thank you.
Yeah. Did writing that was that the first piece that you had written that kind of addressed a social issue? Was that the first time you had done something like that?
No, I mean, all my music has an extra narrative meanings behind it. My second symphony that I wrote actually for Jerry Junkin, it's a wind ensemble symphony, is called Migration and was all about immigration. And so that was another, piece with a narrative beyond music. And then Finding Rothko, Orchard and Fog, Picture Studies is all based on visual art. This little fanfare that LA Phil commissioned a couple years ago called Cool Cat, which is supposed to honor this like famous mountain lion that lived in the Hollywood Hills. That's a little weird one. That's a different one. But yeah, no, I think there's always been some type of social level or political level or spiritual level that enters my music, just because I am a storyteller at the end of the day. I've always been a visual learner. Titles always come first. There's a programmatic element to my music. It's oftentimes like a film score without a film. And that's just how my mind works and what I'm drawn to.
Yeah. I think geography plays so much in music, and I mean, I can hear it in instrumentalists, in maybe more commercial composers, jazz composers, their sound may change when they live in a different part of the world. When you moved to LA, did you find that where you were geographically adjusted your sound at all?
That's an interesting question. I don't fully know. My intuitive response is I think getting married and having children is what actually changed my sound. I've always been relatively optimistic, definitely a half glass full type of person, and always look, for the goodness in people rather than the negativity. I've always been overly loyal, that which can be problematic. And so having kids, I think, added more lightness to my music and and more groove. And then Losing Earth was darker, but as my wife likes to say, I wrote it when I was 38, turning 39. And at that premiere, she goes, "You've officially entered your middle period." and it's sort of true. Like, there was more sophistication behind the piece. I made very few changes at the premiere. Like, it was just, I was more dialed in with my orchestrations. I had more command over the craft, and the piece was just more sophisticated and more mature. So it sort of spoke in a deeper manner, and has some lightness, but definitely more heaviness. And now I'm entering another phase as well, because I don't know if we're aware of any of this, but I had like a serious medical situation for 2 years, and I was out of commission for basically almost 2 years, and that has impacted me. I actually have not written a new orchestral piece since I was sick, and I'm about to do that now. I have a couple of commissions coming up, and one piece in particular. So I'll be writing a concerto for orchestra for the Atlanta Symphony for next season, and that's going to be a very intense, dark piece with some brevity in it and lightness and whatnot. But that's going to be called Concerto for Body, and it's a 35-minute work, and I'm equating the human body and body parts and how they function to all the parts of an orchestra.
Oh, that's wonderful.
Because, right, you can, as a human being, we can walk as a unit, but you can have your fingers move independently, right? Your cheek, whatever you want to do, you can move things. So, and a concerto for orchestra historically is about giving everyone a solo. Everyone has a moment, but sections also have moments. And so I can equate like the winds to the right leg, the brass to the left arm, whatever it is, right? And so it's going to go through the traditions of a concerto for orchestra, but the extra narrative is it's about survival, and it's about your body failing, and then it's about your body coming back.
It's wonderful. How are you feeling emotionally about doing another commission? Are you excited? Are you terrified? Or are you feeling all of those things?
Yeah, all of those things. I mean, it's funny because I really, as I said, I've generally always been optimistic, but, between May 2022 and January 2024, I was like not well. I was depressed. I was bedridden. I had 3 massive surgeries, and I was just not in a good place, period. And that was the first time in my life that I felt like I was like living in this cloud of darkness. And it still impacted me. I think when you're going through a health crisis, and so I was like on a medical leave from the college. I wasn't teaching at all. I wasn't composing. I was just trying to survive. And so, but I took almost 2 years off just trying to survive. And then it's like, okay, you're now over it. You have survived. And now you're coming back into the world January 2024. But what I didn't realize is I come back January 24, and like part of my mind is like, all right, you're back. You're good to go. Everything's normal. But then as I'm back, I'm realizing, wait a second, I'm still not myself. My entire world has actually changed. I don't really know what my new normal is. And so, the other night I was just improvising because I'm slowly getting back into it. And I just started crying because I just felt like I finally hit something that moved me. And Janine heard it, and she just said, it almost makes you cry right now. She was just like, you're back. She's like, you're back. She's like, I feel it. And we both just started crying. And I said, I know. And so, yeah, I'm nervous. I'm nervous to start again. But But I think the concerto for orchestra in particular, I need to do. I think it's like going to be my healing piece. And the other pieces I'll do, and I need to create a relationship with them. But frankly, I'm also in a different place. I don't know what I want long term right now in the world of composing. I really don't. It's like I look back at my lifetime, which is still relatively young. And it's funny. So my wife's mother unexpectedly passed away in March 2024. Very dramatic and tragic. And but I remember something she said to me that I tell my kids now, which was really powerful for me. And she's like, Adam, there's always going to be you're always going to be better than someone, but there will always be someone better than you. And it's true, right? And I mean, for the most part, unless you're Michael Jordan. So there might be one person who's truly at the top of the food chain, but besides that one person in the field, there's a ladder to climb.
That's right.
And when I look at that ladder, it's like I've climbed it pretty high. Like I've worked with, I'm from Massachusetts. The remaining orchestras that I've not worked with in the United States that are, like the great big orchestras, it's basically Boston Symphony and Philadelphia Orchestra. I've worked with New York Phil. I've worked with Chicago. Cleveland Orchestra's done my music, right? San Francisco's done my music. LA Phil's done my music. St. Louis Symphony's done my music, right? All the historical great orchestras have done my music besides Boston and Philadelphia. And the only other commission I've not had that I always wanted in my lifetime was Carnegie Hall. And believe it or not, before I was sick, I had it all. I had a commission from Boston Symphony, Tanglewood, Carnegie Hall, Aspen, a few other organizations, including St. Louis Symphony. It was like a 7-8 consortium to write a companion piece to Copland's original 13 Instruments of Appalachian Spring. And then St. Louis Symphony was going to do the world premiere orchestral version to Full Dance.
Oh, wow.
And that was it. I was like, okay, I have Boston finally. I have Carnegie Hall finally. And, then I get sick and it's like, I can't write these pieces. And now I'm out of it. And for the most part, everyone was still generous and just said, let us know when you want to resume and we'll figure it out. But I'm now back and I'm like, I don't know if I want it. And do I need it? It's not going to satisfy my ego anymore. That I know. And so I look back and it's like, I've accomplished quite a bit. Yes, there's always more to accomplish. There's more to do if you want to do it. But what do I need at this? What do I want going forward as a composer? And that's what I'm still trying to figure out.
You've had such interesting periods in your life and career where you've had these opportunities to define who you are. And I feel like you're kind of in that period right now. Just as you were in like 2010, 2011, like all of that happening. I feel like you're at this interesting intersection now where you're getting to kind of determine which direction you're going to go.
Yeah, I mean, wholeheartedly, the one remaining compositional area that I've wanted to experience at a high level that has not yet happened is film and TV. I would love a major motion picture at some point in my lifetime or a really compelling TV show to just have that experience, because ever since I was 20, my dream all along, after hearing John Corigliano's Red Violin and Thomas Newman's American Beauty both come out the exact same year, both be nominated for an Oscar. Don't know how you could pick between those two as much as I love John. Red Violin absolutely is amazing and deserved it. But in my opinion, American Beauty also deserved it and was a life-changing score that became one of the most temped scores of all time. And those two people became my mentors and my role models, Tom Newman and John Corigliano. And so it's like, I want to live in both worlds. I want to have one piece for orchestra a year and I want to have one film a year. Like that was sort of the dream, but the orchestra commissions just kept coming and coming and coming. I mean, between 2010 and like 2019, 2018, I was traveling almost 1 week out of every single month for performances.
Wow.
And doing residencies and whatnot. And so I got a taste of that, right? I'm signing autographs. I'm talking to a ton of people. I'm seeing the world and all different parts of the country as a 20, 30-year-old, And now I'm in my late 30s and it's like, and I have kids now and it's, what's important to me. And then I go through this health crisis. So it's like, I don't feel the need to grind it out anymore. That I know. I'm not going to write 60 minutes of orchestral music ever again. And I'm not going to accept that many commissions ever again. I just want to be mindful of my time. I want to be more present with my kids. But having a film or TV gig would definitely, that's like the last thing for me that I feel like I want to accomplish. And if that were to happen, then it's not like I'll ever walk away because I have to express myself through music. But I feel like if I had that moment and experience, then it's like, okay, I've now checked off these boxes.
Yeah. Well, my hope is that at some point that's going to happen. That would be amazing. Yeah.
We'll find out.
We'll find out. Well, Adam, it's been a pleasure spending some time with you. And I just thank you for the music and just wish you all the best. Thanks for hanging out with me today.
You're welcome, Brad. Thanks again for reaching out. I really appreciate it.
If you enjoyed this conversation, please follow or subscribe to the Bandwich Tapes wherever you listen, and consider leaving a rating or review. Thanks for listening, and I'll see you next time.